Hello, I know it's been a while. Um, I've been really busy and I have not been willing to put the time and effort into making videos when I've barely had the time and effort to put into personal reading. I mean, I've tried to make reading a priority, and even so, then the moments when I do have time, I end up reading instead. And some of the videos that I do have planned or that I did have in mind took preparation, and that preparation has not been has just not happened. I've just not put the time and effort into prepping for those videos. A big video that I would like to make is introducing my Western Canon reading list. I think I've mentioned that in previous videos, but I'd like to make a video dedicated solely to my own personal list of the Western canon that I created and kind of go through that a little bit. I did kind of sort of start it, but it hasn't been as didn't start off with a bang like I hoped to, and that just has everything to do with my slow reading uh, since classes started, and it's been taking a lot longer. And I also want to do a video on just a little bit about what I've been reading. But this video is hopefully will be a rarity because um, this I went to two used bookstores today, and I'm not supposed to be going to used bookstores because I already have more than enough books that majority I have not read, which is shameful in my opinion. And so I've been really wanting to just dedicate um, a chunk of time to just reading books from my shelves and from my e-reader. Um, but here I am with a used book haul, and so I just thought I would go through some of the books. And I hope this will be the last used book haul for a really long time because there are a lot of interesting books on my shelf. I don't need to be adding more right now. Anyway, I'll start off with the first book. The first book is a Signet classic. My video quality, I can tell, is awful, so you probably can't read that. This is the Great Dialogues of Plato. It has the complete text of the Republic, Apology, Crito, Phaedo, Ion, Meno, and Symposium, translated by W.H.D. Rouse, which is the same translator who translates the Signet Classic Iliad and Signet Classic Odyssey. And I do have all of Plato's works in ebook form. In there's the one translation or one person who translated all of Plato and a while ago, and now all his works are in the public domain. So that's what I have on ebook. I have not read any of Plato yet, and then I have a few Penguin classics in the bookcase here to my left, which is just out of frame. I have a couple of Penguin classics of Plato, which have different translations as well. And I really like, especially with classical authors and translated works, to collect multiple editions and multiple translations of their work. And so I can kind of read across the divide and get different perspectives on the actual work, which I cannot read. I cannot read Plato in Greek, and I never will be able to. So then reading 2-3 different translations of the same work by Plato will be very beneficial, I think. And that's kind of my philosophy with all translated works. And so I usually pick up translated works when I can. This translation is from the 50s, copyright, that's what the copyright says. Yes, copyright 1956, and then looks like it was updated in 1984, and that's modern enough for me, and so that's why I picked up this edition of Plato, even though the spine is not great, but it was cheap. Next is, speaking of my Western canon reading list, is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is a Canadian edition, like a Canadian kind of independent reprint, scholarly reprint line called Broadview, and they publish the text with in the back, not like Norton Criticals where they have like critical essays, but here they have critical or contemporary reactions to the actual book. And sometimes I guess sometimes they do have essays, but they don't emphasize essays. Like, I don't think this one does. This one has just a lot of contemporary reviews and background material and related texts by the same author. And I find that really, really interesting. And for this one, I have Peter Pan on my Western canon reading list as something I must read. But the weird thing with Peter Pan is that there's not really one text. There is a novel, which this includes, but there's also one of the troubles I had when I was researching my Western canon reading list is finding a volume that had all the relevant texts of Peter Pan, because this one I believe has most of them. So this one has the Peter Pan novel, but then there's also a 3-act play and an illustrated novella and some afterthought essay by the author on Peter Pan, I guess, and a couple of other extra materials as well on Peter Pan by the author. So this basically is a Peter Pan anthology with lots of contemporary reviews and background material, and which is exactly what I was looking for. And so I picked this up. So I was really glad to pick this up for cheap. And I really recommend Broadview texts, by the way. I've had to use some of these editions for school or for my university classes, and they're very good editions, I think. Next is the, I guess, second last thing of fiction on this list. I did not buy a lot of fiction this time. It's the Overstory by Richard Powers, which is relatively recent. It won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and I think when did this come out? It's just last year or two, I think. No, I'm wrong. 2018. That's not last year. But even then, it's still relatively contemporary fiction, just a few years ago. This book I bought as another project that I'm doing. I don't usually read contemporary fiction at all. There's way more classical literature that I can read without having to worry about contemporary literature. But I have this challenge that I came up with just a few weeks ago. I went through all of Steve Donohue's best of fiction lists. He has them all the way up to 1990. And I basically went through all his best of fiction lists and plucked the number one from each list. So going back from 1990 all the way till last year, and whatever his best of for fiction that year is, I put it into a document and I listed them all. And my personal challenge is to read them, not in order, but to read all of those books that he has number one, all those best of fiction books that he has on the number one of his lists. And this one was number one for 2018, the best fiction book that Steve read that year. And I have a number of I don't think I've read a single one of his number ones yet, because it was only a challenge that I just came up with recently. But it'll get me into contemporary fiction a lot more, and I think that'll be beneficial. And I take Steve's recommendations seriously. So I think this one will be an exciting read. And I also have a number of his number one books that were number one on his list on e-reader as well that I've gotten for cheap. But so this one will be added to that list. I don't know when I'll start it or how I'll go about it yet, because it's relatively a new project. But I just started collecting some of these books for that. Next is a work of history. This is Antonia Fraser, The Weaker Vessel. I wasn't quite sure whether to buy this or not. But it normally would be something right up my alley. It's The Weaker Vessel, Woman's Lot in 17th Century England. So basically, from what I understand, she's evaluating the role of women in the 1600s in England. And as you can see, it's a pretty chunky book. I think it's it's almost over 550 pages. Just over, I think. And so that's a lot of pages to read on this specific topic, but for some reason, the periods between like the early Middle Ages, so right after the fall of the Roman Empire, all the way up to just before or just at the French Revolution, that big chunk, which is a humongous chunk of history, that really interests me a lot. And I haven't read a lot of history books to begin with, but that broad chunk is, I've been accumulating a lot of books on all sorts of topics in that area, in that time period in history, and this one will be added to that pile of history books. I intend to I guess I could make a video introducing it as well, but for next year, I intend to start actually reading all my books on medieval history. I have a whole shelf of them, and I just want to kind of go through them, and then it'll take me up to the Reformation era and my books on that topic as well. And I'm quite looking forward to that, because I haven't really done a whole lot of concentrated reading in history except for my history classes in university, and that's usually just like a textbook or two. And but I have a whole shelf of books that I want to slowly go through throughout the year. I don't know if it will take me more than a year or not, but I don't know and this one probably won't be added to that. It's 1600s is too late for that, and it's a bit of a thick book too. There is that. The next book. This is the only book I actually did not buy at the used bookstore. This one I actually bought online because the subject really interests me. This one is Diversity, the Invention of a Concept by Peter Wood. This book is from like 2004, I think. And basically in this book, he notices the different uses of diversity already in the early 2000s already. So, I mean, you got diversity as just having multiple different perspectives and multiple representations, but he traces how the idea of diversity has evolved, and I'm not entirely. I think he argues that it perpetuates cliches of group stereotypes and undermines real diversity of ideas and individuals. I think that's the premise of this book, is that he thinks that that the idea of diversity is evolving to something more negative and stereotypical. And this is already from 2004. I mean, you could write a book like this now and analyze our situation now and have a lot more a public discussion about diversity and what it means and what kind of diversity, because it's not just one cover-all diversity. I remember in one of my education classes, I don't know if saying this would get me in trouble, but the class was basically, our class was really just full of like white people. We have one person who immigrated from Asia to come to the university as well, but she was the only person like from out of Canada. And in that class, it's just like all of us were all white and the teacher's white. And the professor, she looks at us and says like, this class isn't a very diverse class. And she kind of just went on from there. And I just kind of like stopped and was like, what does she mean this class isn't diverse? And then I looked around and like, I knew my classmates. We all are different ages, different genders, from different walks of life. This class is very diverse. She just looked, basically, she only looked at us superficially and said this class isn't diverse and kind of moved on from there. But I wanted to dispute that. I didn't say anything in class because you don't say that kind of thing to your professor who's in charge of your grade. But that really struck me, like, our class was diverse. We don't all think the same. We all come from different areas of the province that I live in to come into this class, and we all have different university majors that we're majoring in, and different interests. Of course, that class was diverse. And so when I found out that this book existed, I had to buy myself a copy, and I got one online. So that's a long ramble. Next book is my last book of fiction for the haul. I have a number of books left, but this was the last fiction. It is the Penguin Book of Canadian Short Stories. It's a nice hardcover, and it's a nice thick book too. I think it's over 600 pages. Yeah, it's over 600 pages. And I gotta be honest, I was not sure if I should buy this. It's really cheap. I got it for $3, but I was not sure if I should buy this or not. And I ended up, of course, deciding to buy it. But the reason why I did not want to buy it is because I have a lot of short story collections and I have not read most of them. That's one issue. And most of my short story collections are classics. Like, they have classic short stories that are some of the best short stories and most influential short stories over the last few centuries. So then picking this Canadian short story collection up seemed counterintuitive, because when am I going to read this 600-page tome? And I guess the sheepish way to look at it is that Canadian short stories are not going to be as good as those short stories that I find in my other short story volumes, because those are classics from all different countries and from different time periods. And this is concentrated just in Canada, and I live in Canada. But Canadian literature, I just don't find terribly interesting. And I can imagine that a short story like this, with the best of the best Canadian short stories, as you imagine this would be drastically subpar to any of my other short story collections that I can read. And so I wasn't sure if I should buy this, but I ended up buying it anyway for one reason. And that reason is my goal is to become an English teacher. And part of being an English teacher, part of the curriculum, is that you got to teach Canadian literature. At least it doesn't have to be all Canadian literature, but you got to have some Canadian content in your teaching. And so if I can pick through this and find some good stuff, at least I have some foundation to go off, if that makes sense. And so I hope there's some good stuff in here. I don't imagine most of this would be terribly interesting. I hope I'm wrong and that this is all really good and that Canadian literature is a lot better than I give it credit for, but I don't know, we'll see. The next book, it exposes a weakness in my search for books. One of the things I like to do, or one of the things I really keep my eye out when I'm looking through shelves of used books at used bookstores, is I look for university press symbols on book spines. And this one has that. This one's got from Princeton University Press. It's called #Republic, Divided Democracy in the Age of Social Media by Cass Sunstein. I should show the book. #Republic. This came out in 2017 or 2018. So right in that controversial time frame. Honestly, this book looks dumb, and I admit it looks dumb, but the only reason why I bought it is because it's by University Press, and I hope university presses would have higher standards than, say, clickbaity mainstream publisher would have with a book with this title and this premise. So this book, I don't know a whole lot about what he's going for here. I think it's just the usual argument of like social media has like polarized us and heightened political discourse, and I guess he's going to analyze the bad ways, the negative effects of that, and then offer some ways to move forward. And that's basically what I expect from this book. But I don't know. I hope it's not dumb. It's only 260 some pages, I think. Yeah, just around 260 pages. So it's not a long read by any stretch. And I hope that University Press banner will not let me down. Because if this is dumb, then I'll just have to be careful about what I end up buying from university presses. But anyway, the next book also kind of exposes that weakness. This next book is from Cambridge University Press, and it's called Happiness in Education by Nell Noddings. That cover really mystifies me because I don't know what this cover has to do with education at all. I mean, it has everything to do with happiness, but with education, I don't know. And that's the whole purpose of this book. It doesn't have a blurb on the back, but basically from what I gathered doing a little bit of research on this book after I bought it, is that this is a philosophy of education book. So it's like a philosophical look at happiness and education, which when you think about it, happiness and education usually aren't two words you would associate together. And so she kind of asks why that is and how can we fix that, because if the goal of most parents is to have happy kids, and then why isn't the education system having their goal to have happy kids as well? I think that's what she's going for, or he is going for. I don't know. It sounds interesting, and interesting enough that I would pick it up and read it. It also isn't very long. It's just over 250 pages. So that's that. Happiness and education. I'm not entirely sure what the premise of the book about where happiness would fit in education, but and even just like an inquiry, a philosophical inquiry of happiness and how it fits in education. That seems a bit devoid of reality to me. But for $1, I couldn't pass it up. Next book is also on education. This one is not from a university press, but it is still interesting. It is Teaching Like a Champ, or Teaching Like a Champion, 49 Techniques That Put Students on the Path to College by Doug Lemov. And interesting thing is that this book comes with a CD, or a DVD is what they call it. DVD. I don't so this book is exactly what that subtitle says. It in the table of contents they list 47 different techniques about different they do separate the 47 or 49 techniques into subheadings, which I can read. So it kind of gives you a look about what some of the significant areas that they're focusing on. Part 1 is Teaching Like a Champion, the essential techniques, and the listings here they have are setting high academic standards, planning that ensures academic achievement, structuring and delivering your lessons, engaging students in your lessons, creating strong classroom culture, setting and maintaining high behavioral expectations, building character trust, improving your pacing, additional techniques for creating a positive rhythm in the classroom, challenging students for thinking critically, additional techniques for questioning and responding to students. I mean, this book really does interest me, but I do like it. Like the looking through some of their techniques in here, it really does. I think it'll be really a beneficial read, but I do have a big quibble with that subtitle 49 techniques that put students on the path to college. I don't think the purpose of education should be to put students on the path to college. Especially, I guess I don't know if that has something to do with the bias, but where I went to high school, where most students didn't end up going to college at all, or here we call it university. So I don't know about that, and even discussing with high school teachers that I've talked to, education is so much more than that, and you're from what my values are, I think education should be teaching your students how to grow up and just how to be not just functional, but to thrive as developing humans, to constantly grow and learn these skills that the different classes teach. One of the things that I've learned in going to education classes is that teaching is more about teaching skills instead of teaching content. So your content is important, but the way you teach that content is through the development of certain really important skills and skill sets, which is the real focus of education in my mind. And so whether you go to college or not, you have these skills that you built up through your life in the school system. That would be my quibble with this book, and I don't know how prominent that will be in this book, but if it's the subtitle, I imagine that's the goal, is to get your grade level high and get you You have your students with good grades, and I don't know. Doesn't strike me as a good strategy for teaching, but I think I can harvest interesting techniques from this that will be beneficial anyways. This next book starts a little bit of a theme. The last 3 books, I have 3 books left. The theme is on different modes of thought, which are books that I really, really enjoy. And this one here to start off is on literature. This is the History of Reading by Alberto Manguel, and I think this is a pretty popular book to begin with, at least if the international bestseller title on here is any indication. It's a bit of an oversized book too, and it's nice and floppy, and with the French flaps. So it's an attractive book, but from what I understand, this is a look at what and why we read. I think that's his first line in the description too. He takes us on a fascinating exploration of what it means to be a reader of books. And I was sold from that already. I mean, I'm pretty sure Steve Donahue had recommended this book as well. And so I had this on my radar already. And so to find such a great copy, because the oversized kind of printing lets them have full-size pictures like this, which is not something you would have in a normal size book. Like if I were to grab this book, you can see it's quite a lot bigger, and I like that. The illustrations in here are not in color at all, but there's a healthy dose of them, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm not usually one to care a whole lot for illustrations, but something like this, I think it really adds to the experience. The last 2 books. The next book is following the theme of studying of thought. So that would be like the history of reading would be the literature aspect of how we read books and how different authors and thinkers in literature how they conceive what reading is and why we do it. This book is religious in theme. It is The World Made Flesh, a history of Christian thought. So this would be Christian thought in religion. This is published by Blackwell Publishing. So I don't know if you're familiar with Blackwell Publishing. They publish a lot of textbooks and scholarly stuff. I'm a fan of them as a publisher, and it's always a treat to find books of theirs in used bookstores, because I think I looked this one up, or no, okay, maybe not this one specifically, but I can guarantee you buying a new copy of this, or even a used copy of this, would be really, really expensive, or at least a lot, probably 10 times the amount I paid for this at the used bookstore. But anyway, this is a history of Christian thought. It's not a terribly long book, but it is also oversized. And interestingly enough, it also comes with a DVD. This DVD, I'm told, or CD, they call it a CD, contains over 150 visuals to support the theories and examples discussed in the volume. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It looks at Christian thought. I guess I could read the chapters as well. This book was published in 2005. That is always important to me, just to know when my books are published. But yeah, it goes from like early Christian thought all to medieval, 14th, 15th, 16th century, 17th, 18th century. Does it end in 18th century? That's what it looks like, based on the chapter, the table of contents. But anyway, yeah, when as soon as I saw this on the shelf, I immediately grabbed it. I've never heard of this author before or heard of this book before, but this is right up my alley. I have a lot of books on the history of blank thought. So whether it's like political philosophy, or literature or whatever, um, history of blank thought, and it's something I want. And that leads us to the last book, which is a history of Western thought. It is the story of philosophy, which is the title, and then a history of Western thought is the subtitle. It is by James Garvey and Jeremy Stangeroom. And this book is not your typical fat book on the history of Western thought. This is a beautiful hardcover, and it seems brand new, almost. And it's a heavy thing too, because this book is fully illustrated. So it's lavishly illustrated with pictures and colors all over. And again, I'm not usually one to kind of go out of my way to get these kind of books, but I found this one really, really neat. And then, of course, the text. It's got lots of text and columns and stuff as well. So it is a history of Western thought with just a lot of illustrations or paintings and pictures in it, which I think will be a really interesting experience, because the history of thought books that I'm usually used to are ones like this, A History of Philosophy by Frederick Copleston, or it's just a big dense book with no pictures, with relatively smaller text, and not as inviting, to say the least. I'm not put off by those kinds of books, but these kind of books are an interesting perspective as well, because this one, of course, will not go into the level of detail that, say, Copleston will. But I think as an introduction, I mean, you can't do any worse you can't do worse than this, I guess. Because I did a few months ago, I did try reading the very first volume of Frederick Copleston's History of Philosophy, and only his first volume. Let's just say that it was not for beginners. I'm a beginner, and to make it halfway through his first volume was an accomplishment already, because there was many times where I was lost, just completely lost, and I'm almost certain that I would not be lost trying to read this book, at least not to the same extent. And I just noticed that it's a naked hardcover with the exact same design as the dust jacket. That is really strange. I do not know why they would go out of their way to put a dust jacket on this thing, and it's already got the same design printed on the book. But that wrapped up, hopefully, my very last used book haul for a very, very long time. I thought I might as well do this video to kind of get back into making more videos. I hope to do it almost well, to be more regular about it, because there are videos that I would like to do. I just need to get out of my way to do the videos. I even, for the Western Canon video that I plan to do, or the Western Canon reading list that I created for myself, I actually made a script for it. Not like I'll just sit here and read a script, but like just jotting down my thoughts about the main points I wanted to bring up when I introduced the Western Canon reading list. And I would, of course, make sure to include a link to a PDF of my current one, my latest one, because I've been adding and subtracting to that list for a very long time. I created it last year in November, and so it's been just over a year since I made that list. And but yeah, enough of that, or else I'm gonna ramble on for a while, and this is already long enough. So yeah, thank you for if you made it this far, and I'm sorry again for my terrible camera. That can't be helped, but I'll work with it for now. Thank you.